The headline is simple but chilling. Overnight, the fighting between the United States and Iran expanded dramatically, with each side striking critical infrastructure across the region. First, U.S. forces targeted bridges, rail lines, and a maritime observation tower, as shown in videos and confirmed by Iranian state media. Those shots have the potential to disrupt troop movements and supply routes, and they point to the higher stakes the conflict has reached. According to the same footage, Iran responded by firing on other countries that host U.S. military bases. Kuwait, an ally that relies heavily on U.S. presence for security, reported that power and water plants had been hit, a claim that comes as a stark reminder that civilian utilities are now being drawn into the crossfire. The damage to bridges and railways was documented by Iranian media, which also claimed that the attacks could cripple the region's transport infrastructure. The escalation follows a ceasefire agreement that President Trump declared over a week ago, a promise that had many hoping the fighting would finally pause. However, since that announcement, U.S. and Iranian forces have carried out daily attacks, and Trump has threatened to level civilian infrastructure in an attempt to coerce Iran into a permanent peace deal that would also prevent Tehran from developing a nuclear weapon. Iranian officials have warned that they would retaliate by targeting civilian infrastructure in nearby countries. This threat has prompted legal scholars to comment on the likely war criminal status of such strikes. Structures like water treatment plants are typically excluded from legitimate military targets, as civilians depend on them to survive. Even railroads and bridges, while they do have military utility, blur the line when they also serve civilian populations. This conflict sits in the larger context of the ongoing war domain in the Middle East, which has already inflicted significant geopolitical shifts. As the US and Iran continue to hit each other's infrastructure daily, the risk that neighboring states, particularly those hosting US bases, will suffer unintended damage grows. Reporting from Rome, Laura Jakes has over 30 years of experience covering conflict and diplomacy, and her work has focused on weapons and the wars in Ukraine and the Middle East. She brings that expertise to the story, providing details about the precise locations of strikes and the political backdrop that has led to these new escalations. In short, the war between the US and Iran is now a broader regional threat, with civilian infrastructure becoming increasingly at risk. Whether those weapons will turn existing ceasefires into permanent peace or push the conflict into wider catastrophe remains to be seen. For now, observers recall that the cost of these strikes is not only measured in ammunition fired but in basic services that civilians rely on for everyday survival. And as always, stay informed, stay alert, and thank you for listening. Here's a few minutes of closure and we'll catch you on the next episode.